You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Put your hands together again. You know Leesa. You know Henry. You know Supreet. Where's Mr. Sebastian? Mr. Sebastian Kulczyk is with us. Okay, so we invite you now to hear the discussion panel on different phases of entrepreneurship and startups. The stage is yours.
Great, welcome back. So this afternoon we're going to talk about the many faces of entrepreneurship. Just look across this stage. Smile, everybody. Clearly, entrepreneurship comes in all shapes and sizes. And this afternoon we're going to step inside 5 ideas. First, who is an entrepreneur? What is the spirit of entrepreneurship? Why is it they do what they do? Why is it we do what we do? I'd like to dispel a few myths on entrepreneurship. And I'd also like to talk through how we deal with different dilemmas that we face in the journey on entrepreneurship. And finally, a really important point is to consider what is our contribution to society? What should it be? And what do we think it is today? So to kick it off, I'll just pass it to the panel. And using the last part of the word preneur, if you could tell me what kind of entrepreneur you are. Let's start with Sebastian.
Hello, everyone. It's my first time on stage today, so both gentlemen already have been here.
If you get off and come back, it'll be a second.
That's true. That's true. Should I? Yeah. Should I do it? Okay. So you're not nervous anymore. I'm not that often on stage as you. Okay? So the question: who's entrepreneur? I like the definition that entrepreneur is someone who buys something for a set price, and sometime in the future has to sell it for an unknown price. So that means he's a risk taker. Okay. I think the definition of entrepreneur as a risk taker is an interesting one, and of course there are different drives to take that risks, but taking a risk you also have to mitigate it and deal with the risk. And there are many ways of dealing with the risk, but the one that I love most is innovation. You have to be, innovation is something that helps you mitigate that risk. So I think this panel, this group of people that we have in the room, they're all innovative and they understand what does it mean to face those risks as entrepreneur. I think that's the kind of definition I would give.
Fantastic. Okay, so Sebastian thinks that an entrepreneur is a riskpreneur, if I use my philosophy. Hand it over to Supreet. What kind of preneur are you, Supreet?
I'm not a preneur. I'm a contrepreneur.
What's a contrepreneur?
I'm an anti-entrepreneur.
What's an anti-entrepreneur?
Well, everybody, we use all these labels, and what we forget is we're all trained or educated to fit a certain mold. Then some of us don't fit the mold. The ones that don't fit the mold are the preneurs. Okay. Because they chafe, they imagine things to be different, and most of all, they get frustrated and decide, okay, I'm going to change it. Yeah, I'll give you a simple example. In America, oh, thank you. The coffee is working. Right. In America, shower doors open to the outside. But every time the shower door opens to the outside, it drips on the floor. So I thought to myself, what do I do? I got really mad one day. I said, okay, turn the door upside down. So it opens on the inside, but it opens the other way. Now, if you grow up in a British system, you can walk that way, It's just a matter. But then my friends get confused because they're like, where's the door handle? I'm like, it's over there. So you want to change how it works because what's working is not working.
So would you say you're a changepreneur?
That sounds like I'm making change. Yes, okay, I'm a changepreneur.
Okay. And Henry?
Businessman, creative, this is work. Yeah? So I think entrepreneur in this sense is a creative optimist who is looking to build a better future or do a minor change to optimize what he wished that he want to do. The shower door is a very good example. I don't like the water dripping out. Yes, exactly. I turn mine around too, so it opens inside, so the water drop inside.
Right.
You should come take a look at my shower.
I don't want to take a look at your shower. But you know, this is the crazy stuff we do, because we're not in this audience, or all these people who are like, why do we do this? Because the whole thing, and maybe that's going to your next part, which is the dilemma part, which is, why do we do this? A long time ago, when I first came to the US, in the United States, I went to Thanksgiving dinner, and I was watching one of my friends, and his wife makes a pot roast and cuts the ends off the pot roast. And we're like, why do you do that? I don't know, my mother did it that way. Then we went and asked her mother at Easter and said, why do you do that? I don't know, my mother did it that way. Then we went and asked the grandmother and said, why do you do that? Oh, my pot was not big enough. So what happens is you change something and then you made it into religion. And if your mother does something some way, you never change it. Because if you change something your mother does, it's death. I tell you.
Great. Okay, so Supreet has kindly introduced the next topic, which is that of the dilemmas that entrepreneurs face. And this is one of legacy. Sebastian, what kind of dilemmas have you faced as an entrepreneur?
That's a good one. I'm representing another generation in the family of entrepreneurs. So I think my biggest dilemma was whether I should go my way or I should follow the way that was set up before. And no matter how proud can you be of a path that was set up by someone else, your father, grandfather, but time changes, and at the end of the day, you have to be yourself. And you know, it's your life, it's your satisfaction, and satisfaction is a very important factor of every business. And if you're not doing it convinced that you're doing what you like, you're never going to be successful. So I think that's the big dilemma that I had. But I also realized that there's nothing wrong in change. Change is good. Change is inspiring, and I'm happy I'm making that change in my life and in the life of the whole company organization. That's for sure.
Great. Okay, so we've talked about the dilemma of the past and the dilemma of legacy. Henry, what dilemmas do you face as a venture capitalist in investing in companies?
It's always to fund or not to fund. So if you have funded or seeded a company, they come around to A round and they look pretty good, and you invested because they comply and deliver and meet all the milestones. But in the B round, which is 18 months later, they are facing a little bit of hiccup. So maybe they did a tape out and the iron tape didn't work out, or in some semiconductor industry is always a challenge. So if that didn't happen, are you going to fund them or not fund them? Or are you going to call up all your old friends and say, hey, let's fund this deal. All the other VC will gang up into a consortium and fund them, maybe on a little bit less valuation, which they call a down round. A down round is not a good term. It's a shame. It's showing that the company under your management, because you're on the board, and they did not perform, so it's eggs in your face, basically. So that would be a major dilemma, to have a down round or not a down round.
Okay, very interesting. The down round. Everyone be aware of that one. And Sebastian, I'm going to hand one over to you. Obviously, working in a conglomerate, you've got the dilemma of focus. How do you manage that?
Having great people around me. I think that the team is the main factor of every success of every company, whether it's a startup or is a, as you call the conglomerate, which I wouldn't call it that way, but anyway, the team is a key factor for sure. I'm surrounded by great managers. I'm surrounded by people who understand business very well, and I'm surrounded by people who understand the need of change, which I mentioned before. And The change in the company is not dictated only because of my own idea of how to run business. I just look around at the world and I see that we have to change, and we can no longer call this thing a conglomerate. We have to look into areas that require innovation, that require different skills than we probably needed years ago. And surrounding myself with the right people is the key. And working also with other entrepreneurs who has the similar mindset to mine is another important part of it.
Okay, great. So the people factor is a really strong consideration. And Henry, this is really a question for you, especially when you get to the B round. Obviously, the dilemma of when to scale is a big one. How do you typically evaluate that?
When to scale?
The dilemma of scale.
Depending on what line of industry are you in, if you are in the B2C business, business to consumer business, and you need to proliferate very quickly and make it obviously around the world in less than 80 days, you need to find a way to go all out, step on the gas pedal, and go 100 miles per hour. And that's because you want to occupy the market share. If you don't occupy the market share up front, your recognition in the industry will be diminished, because there will be at least 5 other people doing the same thing. So you do need to find a way to oversize your product, make sure that the whole world knows about your product. That's the time when you step on the gas pedal. But there's times that you step on the brakes too, which is a different story.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we've talked a few dilemmas through, the dilemmas of the past, of legacy, of how to scale, the dilemma of focus. And now over to you, Supreet. Fact or fiction? Is getting venture money the best way to grow a business?
Fiction. The fact is, if you have your own money, it's the best money. Don't go to the VC if you have your own money. Use your own money first, because equity is very expensive. Now, you just saw me talk about valuations and unicorns and all that. They're stupid money, you know? And you guys know what OPM stands for? Other people's money. If it's cheap, use other people's money. Don't use your money. But the cost of equity, if it's smart money, which is it comes with very good people who are going to help you grow faster, better, more quality, then it's great money. If it's not that kind of money, you know, you get distracted, and the next thing you know, there's some guy knocking on your door. His name is Guido, and he wants his money back. You know, it's very hard. He might break your legs. And so it's one of those things.
So independence.
You've had Guido visit you?
Actually, luckily not. Luckily not. But yeah, I mean, independence is the factor that relieves you of a lot of stress. That's for sure.
There's a saying that I've heard, which is first comes the carrot and then comes the stick. Is it a true statement, Henry?
Mostly carrots. We encourage people, motivate people.
When do you deliver the stick?
It's kind of rare. We kind of don't do that.
Okay.
First of all, we choose always the right entrepreneur to fund. So
Yeah, the
always
team really matters, because if you got the right seasoned team, so failure and getting the stick is always you chose the wrong team. And if you chose the wrong team, then at some point, the stick is you're going to fire the team and start again or reboot. And that is very hard in this day and age. And so that is, and I tell you, seasoned teams repeat success over and over and over again, not because they're trained for success, it's because they've been conditioned by failing, and so they have good lessons of what not to do.
Excellent lessons. And over to you, Sebastian. Fact or fiction? You have to build up entrepreneurs from a young age.
There's nothing wrong in a young age. I mean, less experience for sure, but there's a lot of motivation, motivation to prove yourself, motivation to prove to your friends that you can be extraordinary. Experience is an important factor, and lacking that experience is bad. But if you're learning from your own mistakes, as you said, if you're learning, then there's a bright future ahead of you. So I made my mistake as well. I'll do plenty in the future, but trying to learn lessons out of them. And I'm not that young, I just look young.
No, my question was not that you
but
had to be an entrepreneur from a young age, but do you
yeah.
think that entrepreneurship has to be instilled in people at a young age?
I think that right now at least I'm meeting more and more very talented young people who are willing to be entrepreneurs, and I'm very positively surprised how well they're prepared to run their business. But it doesn't mean that they have to finish, to graduate the best schools in the world. It doesn't mean they're going to be successful. It's their drive, internal drive for success. That's the key factor. We actually spoke today about the drive. What's the most important thing when you meet a young entrepreneur who is trying to convince you to invest into his idea? And if you see a passion in his eyes, and as you said, the passion, I mean, and the temperature in his hand, when you're shaking his hand, that means he's so excited about the project, the whole idea, that probably he's not going to fail, because in his head, there's no way he can even admit I'll ever fail. And this drive is great. This drive is amazing. So I think it's the motivation. The motivation is the biggest thing there is. It doesn't have to be a financial motivation. It could be different motivations. Just simply wanting to change the world.
Okay,
make
great.
it better.
And coming back to our contribution to society, what role do you think should be an entrepreneur's contribution to society?
Contribution to the society. When an entrepreneur is forming a company and implementing something that he believes in, I truly believe that the first object that is on his mind should not be making money. That's a very bad objective. He should be thinking about achieving something for the society, helping the world to grow, or saving the world, or cutting down carbon emission, or something like that. I think those are the right objectives to set. In fact, this quarter, if you want to come to my class in Silicon Valley, I'm teaching social entrepreneur, helping people to have impact investing and doing things for a cause, running a social enterprise. I think that's the key that one should set the objectives on.
And Supreet, what do you think should be an entrepreneur's contribution to society?
So it depends on the challenge. There's a lot of people who are trying to solve some very big problems. Traveling to Mars, clean water, solving diseases, and now they've become, it used to be the realm of governments, and it's starting to come into the private-public partnership. And so you can do both. You know, you can be a good entrepreneur and solve things for society. But I'll tell you one thing I caution people, because solving a problem for society and providing a bad product for your customer means you're going to fail. The first contribution you do is the reason you became an entrepreneur, and this is with the exception of social entrepreneurs, is when you're solving a problem for your customer, that is your first contribution. Then there is the second contribution, which is, okay, as you become successful, how do you become, to your words, a good citizen? If, and you know, and this, going back to your reputation thing, Uber, again, is the example we go to. They solved the problem, but the monopoly of the taxi cabs got broken with Uber creating disruption by making everybody into a pseudo taxi cab driver, irrespective of their efficiency. But the social impact of their behavior to get there has a negative, you know, so you've got to look at it from a balance. And yet, the customer experience has to be delightful. You know, I really hate the word satisfaction, because it means average, whereas I like the word delight. When you start delighting your customer, that is your first win. Now, what you do with that win and how you monetize that win becomes the foundation block of building a successful brand for yourself and a successful reputation. That's really where you're getting to.
Okay. So Henry's told us about social entrepreneurship, and Supreet shared with us the contribution that you make through the general operations of your business, such as delighting your customers and operating your business in an appropriately ethical and acceptable and defendable and sensible and legal way. Correct?
Wow.
Okay, and over to you, Sebastian. What do you perceive to be the contribution of an entrepreneur to society?
I'll define maybe two layers of that contribution. One is more local one, I would say, CSR kind of thing. So if you're an entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur, you have to take responsibility for your coworkers. You have to take responsibility for the society living around you, people involved in your project, but not only. I mean, sharing is caring. I strongly believe that. And just simply sharing and helping people is very important. Plus, also helping them with programs, with projects that will allow them to be to build kind of their own responsibility for themselves and their close ones is super important. Giving them tools to develop that, giving them a rod, not a fish. And a second layer of responsibility is maybe for those global brands who actually have impact on so many millions of people around the world that everything they do is being followed. So whenever they come with new trends, with new ideas, they have to be aware that there are millions of kids around the world who will just simply follow them. And it's not maybe that they will do something wrong, but for example, they will provide a product that maybe they will sell quite well and their earnings will go high. But the kids will waste their time on doing something they shouldn't do. They should spend that time learning or even just being outside. I mean, you don't see that anymore outside. You go out on the street and you don't see kids playing. Everyone sits and plays computer games or other stuff. I mean, that's a responsibility. I believe that's a responsibility of those global big companies, and they just simply should be aware that whatever they do, if they've got so many followers around the world, every move they do, every product they do release, it's going to be followed, and it has to be responsible because they have an impact on people.
Okay, so contribution to society through globally responsible leadership as a company. Is that a good summation?
I think so.
Okay. And in Poland, I just had a look at where you rank on the Global Entrepreneurship Index, and you're currently ranked as a country as number 31. And there are 7 factors, according to the World Economic Forum, that are needing to be present in order to improve that ranking. Obviously, Silicon Valley is still number 1. And these are regulatory framework and infrastructure. Obviously, access to clean water, energy, transport, telecommunications is a must. But of course, having a regulatory framework with the right tax incentives and the like is important. The market size, which Henry, I heard you say earlier in your presentation. The culture, access to human capital and workforce, education and training, support such as mentors or advisors, accelerators, or a network of peers, as you pointed out, Sebastian, and funding and finance. All 7 are ingredients for a healthy ecosystem. What do you consider, and we'll start with Henry, to be the most important ingredient to get a cluster and ecosystem operating and working efficiently?
I think immediately it's not money, it's not talent and all that. I think it's the mental attitude, the can-do attitude. You say, there's a pain point of a problem statement here somewhere. The thing doesn't work. I'll make it work. And that's the attitude. Money, plenty of money in the world. If you have the right product, right project, do it perfectly like the way I taught about the 5 elements, your plan, your business plan will be read. And it will be critiqued. We can always correct it to fit it. And market size it right and so on. So it's mental attitude. If you can make something work, if you can prove to the funding capitalist that this is something that they can fund and they'll get the return, I think that's important.
Okay, so Henry mentions culture, that tolerance of risk and appetite for entrepreneurship. What else factors into that, Supreet? How can you build a culture of entrepreneurship?
So, yeah, if you go back, I will give you an interesting example that is changing the world. And this is about 15 years ago, India decided to do something different. And the result of that is almost, almost, $50 billion has gone to India. And it all started with reducing or lubricating the bureaucracy to reduce the hurdles. And the government saying, okay, as we reduce these hurdles, what it did was allowed, the cost in days, in the olden days, to get a license would take you 60 days just to start a business. And that was if you didn't have to bribe anybody, and if everything worked, and if the sun rose and everything was smiling. Many times it ended up being 6 months, a year, and there were quota systems. And when they collapsed that process and they made it easier, and the only thing they did was you could do it online. It was weird, since you didn't have to bribe 10 people to get there, it immediately caused a huge influx of money. That money, then, the capital came, it was foreign capital, all of a sudden they felt safe, the regulatory environment started building around the framework of speed, not protectionism. So I think that you can't just do this in the private world, you have to get the private and the public world working together. One has to enable, otherwise everybody's going to come to Silicon Valley and we're already too crowded. We don't need you. Plus, remember, you're not going to get a lot of money because there's too many of us. But what happens is, when you're in your government, you know your market better than we know it, but your government starts to facilitate that investment, and maybe they says, I put $1 in, if you find $1, we'll match it, we'll reduce the bureaucracy and make the regulation less, and maybe we'll help you as incubates things. And these are things that you can create, and together you create an ecosystem for investment. And I think that's an important piece, because that ecosystem starts to feed on itself, and it'll build, the old processes will crumble, the new processes will evolve.
Okay, so you're talking about good governance and transparency, as well as ease of doing business.
Right.
Excellent. And Sebastian, over to you. This is obviously closer to your heart, being in Poland. What do you see as the most important factor?
As the last one to answer, I have to admit that both gentlemen were 100% right. There were 2 factors that I was about to mention. So, entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurial culture, super important. But in Poland, this actually works perfectly fine. I think that also historically we have this good attitude towards entrepreneurship. And the second thing is the regulatory issues. Sometimes we expect the governments and the regulatory bodies to help. It doesn't happen, so let them just not disturb us. I would put it that way. If those 2 factors are met, I think the others are relatively easy. As you said, there's plenty of money in the world, and the way you're going to shift it from one market to another, it's a different story. But there's enough of that. So entrepreneurship and governments and legal issues. That's 2 key factors.
And I understand that the government is in presence here today and is listening wisely. So thank you very much for your ideas. If I could ask you to leave one thought based on your experience here at the conference today, one final thought on the many faces of entrepreneurship, what advice would you have for the audience? Starting with you, Henry.
I think if you embarking on a journey to solve a problem, chase after a dream, you should do it yesterday. I think this is the best time to raise money. There are plenty of positive capital in the world right now. Stock market's doing well. And it's a time when the society is changing, and there's a lot of disruptive technologies that are coming to service. In the old days, you got dune buggy, then you got steam car, then you got gasoline car, now you have battery, Tesla. Next you have autonomous driving. Next you have, after that, autonomous flying. And supposedly 2020 Tokyo Olympics, all the cars that goes into Tokyo are supposed to be battery operated, zero emission for carbon. So those are all a complete brand new industry for you to invent and chase after. I think you should pay attention to that. And there are many other clean tech, biotech, life science deals that you should be chasing after. So I think to be a good entrepreneur right now is the time, perfect timing. Go for it. I'll help you.
And Henry, your email is?
Henry@garage.com, yay!
Over to you, Sebastian. Sebastian, what's your advice for the entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs in the room?
I would say awareness. Just be aware that no matter what kind of industry you represent, whether it's more traditional one, whether it's the latest technology, there's always a place for innovation, disruption. That's what I love about Singularity is actually pointing out those areas and showing us that everything can change, and as we see, the world is changing so fast, it can change within weeks and months. So we always have to be prepared as good entrepreneurs, and be aware. Just simply be aware, follow the trends, be the trends leaders if we can, but never think that you're on the top. Never think you're on the top. There's someone always, behind you and wants to get you off the top. So be aware.
Okay. So awareness from Sebastian. And finally, over to you, Supreet. What's your advice to every budding entrepreneur in the audience?
Lead. If you can't lead, follow. If you can't follow, get out of the way.
Fantastic. Okay, so today we...
Can I add one thing to what you said? If you wouldn't hire yourself as a hired gun to do some job in your company, let it do to someone else. Let other person do it. That's exactly
outsource. We're back to lead, follow, or get out of the way, because I don't know how to follow that up with anything other than you know yourself. If you're the expert, you're going to lead. If you don't have the knowledge, you're going to follow the expert. And if you're, let's say, your government, you're going to get out of the way. You're going to let them and watch them fly. They will make a new world that you can't even dream. Truly. And then listen to Henry.
Wise words from Supreet. Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you, Henry. We've learned some very interesting things today. You see the many faces of entrepreneurship on this panel, and I'm flying the flag for every woman entrepreneur in the audience. Talking about the spirit of entrepreneurship, what are those factors that really make us do what we do? We've dispelled a few myths. That you don't have to be a great entrepreneur and be in Silicon Valley, that you can get venture money, but only at the right time, at the right price, and that you can build entrepreneurship from a young age, but it's all about getting them motivated. We also talked about the dilemmas of scale, the dilemmas of the past, of legacy, and also the dilemmas of focus and transparency. And finally, we talked about the different contributions we can make to society. I hope you've enjoyed the opportunity to hear from the different phases of entrepreneurship, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for this discussion. Leesa, Soulodre, Henry Wong, Supreet, Singh, Manchanda, and Mr. Sebastian Kulczyk. Thank you very much.